Hi guys, welcome back. This is the clipboard for the Redwing's 1049 clipboard orders page, part number 2. Let's see, we're here. We've actually changed planes. I think the last one was the EC-121, the Air Force, or no, the Navy version. Now we're back to mats. One of the things I wanted to show you was the in version 2.4, which is going to be released in the near future, you can see that there are little like recycle symbols that are here. So if you've executed a checklist and you want to go ahead and reset it, all you need to do is click on that line and it'll go back into a reset mode, which is very useful. And you could use that, like for example, if you take off and you do a short hop and you, instead of parking and doing a full startup and all that, you just want to roll back out there and get going again. Well, since you've already done your after landing checklist and before landing and all that kind of stuff, you really need to reset all of those, and you need to reset back to your before takeoff checklist to make sure that everything's set correctly. So this will give you the ability to do that, which is a pretty cool feature. I think in the previous video we set this to 8,000, but since I'm doing a pretty short flight, and we'll let you take a look at this, basically taking off from Miramar and basically just doing a nice little loop coming in for a landing. And we're going to do this full automation, which is, you know, some feature that you're probably going to want to be able to use when you're first learning. And in order to do that, we'll roll out onto the active. We've already got this set. We have our course in there. Right here, you're going to need to select GPS if you're doing that. Now, if you're flying VORs, keep that set to nav. And just as a reminder, you cannot use the CDI selection on this to make your choices. You need to actually make it from the clipboard, because of the way that the automation is set up for the autopilot. So we're going to go ahead and select that. The other thing that you're going to need to make sure that you do is flight path needs to be set to localizer, which is a center position, in order for it to take input. We're going to keep that off for right now, but I just want to show you as a reminder when we take off that you'll notice it's not following your course. You need to make sure that you set that flight path, and then that enables it to take the input from the nav radio or your GPS, which is going to drive the autopilot at that point. So we're going to go ahead and click this. While that's going on, we're going to roll out here. Let's see. Break off. Get a little bit higher up. This airport actually has some bumps on the runway, so hopefully we take off before we hit them. But if you notice it jumping around a little bit towards the end, that's what's going on there. All right, so we're lined up, park and brake on. So at this point we have our altitude set, we have our course that we're going to follow, and we want to go ahead and select a manage takeoff and then manage and then take off here. What that's going to do is all of the checklists that need to be initiated for takeoff, roll, you know, your rotation, your flaps up, your gear up, a climb, power, all that kind of stuff. Since we have the flight engineer, the pilot and co-pilot enabled, that are going to handle that for us, and you'll hear all of the discussion going on. The only thing you need to do is drive it straight down the runway, or at least as close as you can. So we're going to enable it here. We're going to say takeoff.
Max power.
Max power.
Roger.
See the throttle
Max
starting
power.
to come in. Manifold pressure will start building. once it gets up to, you know, between 40 and 50, you can go ahead and release the brakes. There we go. Release the brakes. And now we just drive it down. There is a little reminder right here that just says stay on runway track. So that's your whole, that's what you need to do as being the pilot.
Rotation.
Okay, so there's rotation. And it's just coming off. It's pretty cool. And you'll see that once we hit 140, gear should come up. There's the gear. See it popping up. And then the next point,
Gear is up.
Mito power, which pulls it back to 50 inches of manifold. And then our airspeed will increase to 180, and then we'll get a command for flaps up. And then it'll go into a climb
Flaps
condition.
Up.
There you
Roger.
go.
Flaps up. Climb power.
Roger.
So climb power is somewhere in the range of, you know, 38 to 40. May go a little bit higher than that when you get to higher altitudes.
Flaps up.
You can see we're managing our speed. We have this set to 5,000. We're at 1,500, so we're going to just be in that climb. Now, I want to show you this. So you can see we're off course. Well, we're off course because we did not set that to
oil cooler flaps.
Set.
Take that signal, and sometimes you need to flip it over to the side in order to make it register. So you can see now we're turning to go ahead and get on course. I'm going to scroll in there. So we'll start changing our course over to pick up that, and it'll just go through its normal climb. So now we've initiated the climb. We're in a controlled climb. Manifold pressure's looking good. Back here, the one thing you need to get in the habit of checking is cylinder head temp, which,
please acknowledge.
Sorry, I gotta turn that radio off, is managed with your cowl flap. I have mine mapped to a button so you can open and close them very easily. Same thing with oil cooler, which is right here, and that's going to drive the oil inlet temperatures. So you're managing essentially a flap that's after the fact, but it's cooling the oil, it's pumping it back in, and this is telling you what the temperature is after it's gone through the oil cooler and it's coming back into the engine. So this is the place that gets managed there. One thing real quick, you can see that these props are not synchronized, and what you need to do is turn this off, hit that to reset it, flip it back up, and then hit that, and now you can see that the props are actually synchronized. Okay, so we're still climbing. We're coming up to 5,000 feet. So we should start leveling off here. There we go. And the one of the problems that people get into on the airplane is you don't set yourself up ahead of time to be at the right altitude when you're landing. And so we're gonna do that by telling the co-pilot. You could see that he gets turned off once he's reached the altitude that he was managing to. It actually gets turned off. So you need, if you want to further use him, you need to turn him back on. We're gonna lower the altitude down to 3,000 feet, and I'm going to ask them to manage the descent. And before that, we're going to click the before descent checklist.
Autopilot servo disconnected levers. Ordnance lights. Set.
see the lights get switched there.
Altimeter set.
Set.
Engine superchargers. Low. Fuel pumps.
1,
So you
2,
want to be
3,
ahead of the
4,
game
5.
on this to get yourself set up.
Fuel tank selector.
1, 2 alpha.
I know my
3
running
alpha, all
runway
on and confirmed.
heading is going to be 095.
Tank
So
5 and fuel
just
coordinate
setting that
levels.
right now.
Close.
You could use this button. I actually have it mapped to a
pressure.
button on
Cabin pressure.
a
confirmed.
Cytec controller,
landing.
so it's a little bit easier to see.
Landing weight.
Landing weight checked.
D40 set check
And
is
our-
completed.
VOR. So now that they've done that, I'm going to go ahead and say manage,
Power, please.
and they'll go ahead
Roger.
and reduce us down to 3,000 feet. While that's happening, I'm going to set up, you can see that we're just out here. We should be turning shortly and actually start coming back in. So I'm going to set up our radio. It's this one right here, 111. Oops. 55, that's our ILS frequency. So you can see right here that we're a DME of 18.2 miles out, 18.3 because we're still turning. So we're in a good place for our descent to get down and get stabilized at 3,000 feet before we get to that point. And the reason why that's critical is because if you hit the glide slope and you start descending, it's very hard to slow the airplane down. So you need to get set with flaps, 60 to 80 before you do that manually. And if you are using the automation, asking them to descend well before you're going to be there, well before you hit the glide slope, is going to set yourselves as well as the automation up for success. So let's see, so we're about 3,500 feet. We're still 17.3 miles out, so we're actually looking really good. And the one thing is this is another place where people make mistakes. It's easy to do. We're following a GPS course, and at some point we need to switch over and actually pick up the ILS. Well, the only way that that's going to happen is we need to go back here and actually switch over to nav. Okay, and you can see now that we picked up our nav radio. We're still not descending. The automation will get us on course because it's following the ILS frequency that we set up. But now we actually need to have the co-pilot manage the landing. So we're going to click here, and we're going to click landing, and then it's going to
Flaps
execute
Pilot is on. Roger, flaps 60%.
all of the things that need to happen in order for us to get in a landing configuration. Flap deployment,
Flaps 80%.
landing gear deployment,
Roger, flaps 80%.
power management, all those types of things happen. So you can see we're right
Flaps
now
80%.
13.9 miles out, and we're still under glide slope, which is good. I'll turn this back over to course a little bit. The airport is going to be right in this area. We're just pointed a little bit left of it. Should pick that up here pretty quick. Should start adding throttle. You can see that the power got down a little bit too low because we're still under glide slope. So it was trying to manage that by slowing us down, and now it's got to add throttle in order for us to not get too slow and get into a stalled condition. Let's see, so we got our flaps out. I think we're at 80%, and you should see the glide slope is starting to come in now. And there's the runway right there, so we should start picking up the center line here and turning to the right. Looks like we're going to start our descent. shortly you'll see the vertical speed change. Obviously they're managing the power to keep us in the right range. And somewhere between, I don't know, I want to say 7 miles out is when landing gear will go down, full flaps
Cruise power, please.
will happen.
Power.
Roger, roger. Cruise power.
Should not be doing that. That was kind of strange. 'Cause we're in landing. Yeah, and we're descending. It's actually interesting. Maybe a little blip in the automation there, but it looks like it's managing things the correct way. Descending down, we're starting to pick up our everything's looking good. So we're about 7 miles out.
Gear extended, please.
Roger. Is there
Always love it when that happens. So we're managing the speed, we're right on here, everything's looking good. Now, when you're in a full automated landing, it's difficult if you choose to yank it out of there from the automation standpoint, because they're controlling throttles and inputs on your yoke and elevator, rudder, all that kind of stuff. It's very difficult to change that out at the last second. So if you're going to do a full automated landing, you need to let it go. We'll do another video on manually setting it up, but essentially it's pretty much the same. It follows glide slope down, and you're working in the throttles, but it's still, keeping you right on glide slope.
Flaps 100%.
And you would just end up turning
Roger,
off the
flaps
autopilot at
100%.
the end.
flaps 100%?
But with automation set up for it to auto land, essentially, you need to let it come all the way down if you're going to do that. Trying to turn things off at the last second is kind of a recipe for failure. And I've learned that the hard way a few times. So let's see what happens here.
500 feet.
So you can see we're on V-lock, which is good. This is that little bump coming over this. For some reason, the glide
300.
slope always has a tendency to read like we're a little bit too high, but it looks like we're pretty good here. So this is, I'm not touching anything. This is coming in on its own.
200. 100.
I'm just gonna do a little
50.
flare.
30. 20.
Okay.
Reverse.
Speed down.
And at this point,
Yes.
I'm gonna turn all this off.
Pilot is disengaged.
Turn that off, get us off here, so because it can get a little bit squirrely, because if you keep the autopilot on, it thinks that you're trying to, oops. Turn off there as well, because he's trying to manage the throttles. just gonna pick a little spot right here in front of us. Yeah, so I guess the one word of advice I'd give you guys is you want to be ahead of the game a little bit on this. Slowing her down, and then we can turn this back on and do
After
after.
landing checklist. Cold flaps.
Set.
Oil cooler flaps.
Set to 30%.
Fuel pumps.
1, 2, 3, 4, off.
Master RPM control.
Set.
Auxiliary control boosters. Off. Wing flaps. Rotor
Up.
flaps up. After lock.
Okay. And now we'll do parking.
On parking checklist. Brake selector level. Emerge. Eau dilution.
Set.
The
Engine
oil
one,
dilution
ignition
sets you
off.
up if you're on a cold
Flaps
airport.
up for ignition off.
Shut these down. So it sets you up for a cold airport start, and it actually pumps fuel into your oil and dilutes it down so that you make sure that it's not too thick to turn the motors over in the
slides.
morning. So it's
Set.
quite a little process. It's not modeled, but it
Stairs.
is called
Checked.
out in the checklist. And I think
Doors.
that's it.
Open.
It's getting us down to the end. We are ready to deplane.
On
And,
parking checklist completed.
yeah, I just want to thank you guys for
Ordnance
watching.
slides.
If you have any questions, please feel free to post some comments. And if you want direct support, you can come out to the Redwing Discord, and there's always people online to be able to help you out there if you got questions. Thanks.